What up, everybody? In this video, I present to you my conversation with the CEO of Maude, a sexual wellness brand that has raised over $10 million and is completely crushing the game. I fell in love with this brand when I reviewed it a while ago, and I got the chance to interview the CEO, which is just unbelievable. I can't believe how this Netsphere podcast is turning out, and it's really all because of you guys. So without further ado, I present to you the interview with the CEO of Maude. First of all, thank you so much for taking the time to, do this. This was really, I was kind of starstruck when you replied to my comment. I was like, no way, because I had already done a video on your brand, and I was fascinated by the design and just the idea and everything. And so when you replied, I was like, wow, that's amazing. So thank you.
Yeah.
Of course. Well, the first thing that I want to talk about, I guess, is would you mind giving an introduction on what you're doing, especially with Maude? Maude is how you pronounce the brand, right?
No, it's Maude. Just Maude.
Maude. Okay, that's
Like
much better.
Yeah.
Oh, okay, I like that.
Yeah. So Maude is a sexual wellness company that is gender inclusive, age inclusive. We launched 4 years ago. We are based in New York.
Awesome.
And recently we launched in Sephora as one of the first sexual wellness brands that they've ever had in their 52-year history, which is really exciting.
That's incredible.
Yeah. And here we are in the middle of Sex Ed for All month. So we're really busy over here.
Wow. Well, that's amazing. So I want to talk a little bit about your background because I actually pulled up your website and everything that you're doing. And it was really interesting to see you actually started by being a part of the Everlane team.
Yeah.
So how did you go from that to, I guess, what you're doing now, where you've raised a bunch of money for your company, you've created something, a beautiful brand, and something that's really like making a big difference. How did you go from that point to this?
So I was one of the first employees at Everlane. I ran social media. When I left, they were closing their LA office. So I lived in LA at the time. And I wanted to stay in LA. I didn't want to go to San Francisco. So I ended up kind of venturing out on my own and starting, I basically started to help brands build their social media strategy, their brand strategy. And then a few years into doing that, this idea came out of a conversation that I had with people. And in my early career, I was legislative aid in healthcare, and I started to really think about the category. And I was like, I also was at an organic beauty company before Everlane. So a lot of what I had been doing kind of led to this moment.
Wow.
And I thought, I'm actually going to pursue the category because it's really outdated. So I don't know if I imagined that we would do so much in a short time, but
Yeah.
Here we are.
Wow, that's amazing. So that you talked a little bit about how you came up with this idea. And when I first came across your brand, I was like, man, this is brilliant. Like, I've never seen a brand in this category that's, positioned like this, designed like this. I was like, this is a really, really good idea. I'm curious, how did you learn, about branding or what have some steps that you've taken to design these types of brands like this?
Well, I think the first thing is what I recommend for anybody who's trying to start a brand or is leading a brand is to know the market. So everybody thinks they have a good idea. Everybody thinks that they're the first ones to think of something, and you really have to do the research to see what's missing. The other thing that the other piece of advice I give people is to build a brand book early. And by doing that, you're walking through the exercise of basically deciding who you are and deciding who you're not, so that you can keep basically on track, right? So you're constantly checking yourself against this brand book so that you know that what you're doing is very clear. So it's just about creating guardrails and knowing what the market is and knowing where you fit into that, and then just really sticking to it.
Nice. So like constraints and stuff like that.
Yeah.
Wow. I like that. That's really good advice, actually. Now at this point in your career, you're leading this big business, which is, I'm sure you probably wouldn't have imagined like what you've built up to so quickly, like you mentioned. I'm curious, what are some things that you can
tell by how tired I am? That's a lot of work.
Yeah, it sounds like you guys are busy. But what are some things that have helped you kind of build this team? Because obviously you're not doing this on your own. That would be insane. So what are some things that have helped you systemize your business?
So I think the first thing is like mapping out what are the like we actually I have somebody that works here who has been here with me since a year before launch. So
Oh,
one of
wow.
the things that I really recommend also, depending on what kind of company you have, if you have a consumer company, building community really early and awareness. So he joined a year before launch to start to build social media, which obviously I knew how to guide that. And then started to create like the first wave of customers. So we did that through a big survey. And then, it's bringing in product people, bringing in sort of like the basics, like the must have people that you could not run the business without and people that you could not replace essentially. So
Hmm.
anything that you can do on your own, like it was really interesting to, sorry, I'm going to sidebar this for a
No, go
second.
for it, please.
I have talked to so many people who sort of think that there's a lot of glory in being a founder, and there is maybe, but I haven't seen it yet. Like, doesn't matter how much press you get, it's a lot of work. And so what you have to recognize is like you should be a part of the team. You should be using your own skill set to build the business. It's really not about handing it over to everybody. And what I mean by that is like over hiring, especially in areas that you could potentially lead, is like I think a critical error, and
Hmm.
it's a potential misuse of money and time because you should just be a part of the circle of people that need to build a business. And I know that sounds really obvious, but I do think that there are some founders that think like, oh, well, I started this, now I should be able to like have a, sort of like be able to just be out there doing whatever. No, you need to be working.
Wow. No, that I actually think a lot of times like some of the best advice in hindsight is really obvious, but people just don't really think about it too much. So I think that's incredible. So I'm curious just to get to know you a little bit better, if you don't mind me asking, what I mean, do you have any entrepreneurs in your family or anything like that?
Actually, most of my family, they're in engineering or they're in medical tech. I don't know. So
Oh,
very entrepreneurial. I'm like probably the least educated person in my family. Everyone's like hyper educated,
that's funny.
and very driven. But I would say like from a very young age, my mom basically raised me as a single mom. I knew my dad, he was around, but she was like the primary caretaker and she
Wow.
was always worked. She got her master's degree. She put herself through school. So I was really aware of um, independence. Like at an early age, I thought like, oh, this is the way to be independent. And
Hmm.
I got my first job at 14. So I think I've always been
Oh, wow.
entrepreneurial. Yeah, I was a baby. I
That's
wasn't even
young.
supposed to be working. It was at a coffee shop and they essentially lied for me so that I could make espresso. But I think it felt like I had something of my own. And I don't mean that in a way it's not about, again, the glory. It's just literally about feeling like you can take care of yourself.
Wow.
So that was always that was always how I operated from the time that I could.
Wow, that's awesome. I love that. It's like, accountability and having control. I think that's what led me to entrepreneurship as well, is like wanting to control my own destiny, as corny as that sounds. That's kind of how I view it, I guess. So I'm curious just to ask you a little bit of a more technical question. So my audience is mostly business owners from all types of vibes. So like from drop shipping to service businesses, like all different things. What are some things that you guys that has really like tipped the needle in terms of marketing efforts? So maybe like blogging or Facebook ads, anything like that.
Yeah, I think all of it. I mean, for us, the category on Facebook I know that you kind of went over this in analyzing the business. Like, we can't advertise explicitly. We will get our ads shut down. So we have to
Right.
be pretty, I mean, the brand itself is like pretty elegant and like
It is.
it's not explicit, but I think I was really looking for creating inroads in press so that the story was getting told in a much broader way. I think Facebook ads are really tricky because it's a category in which, look, I'm really happy that we're not in a hyper saturated category because that's hard. But I think
Right.
we were also in a category where you had to tell stories. Everybody is the audience. It's not just one type of person. You had to tell stories where they could like understand what you were saying, but you're subtle about it. So it was always just this dance of it feels like one person at a time on Facebook versus
Yeah,
press, like you're amplifying to a lot of people. So for me, press is
interesting.
huge. Yeah. And I'll
Wow.
say, like, not everybody wants to talk about every subject, so press is easier to sell than most things.
Well, that's
I mean,
interesting. I actually
that's
hadn't thought about that.
confidential.
Like, I
Yeah.
never really think about press when I think of marketing, but you're right. Actually, that way you can sort of guide the narrative instead of having people, I guess, assume things about your brand. That's pretty cool. So I'm also curious now. You said that you got started in, or you had this idea basically from your background as well in like health, right?
Mhm.
Um, so interestingly enough, you mentioned your family was always in like health technology. Now you kind of built a health technology brand as well. So how does your family feel about what you're doing? Yeah, I'm just really curious about that.
Uh, so my cousins are really they're so well, so on my mom's side, I'm the oldest cousin, so they just always thought I was, like, doing my own thing. I think
Uh
that
huh.
they really think it's cool. A lot of them invested in Maude, which was really exciting.
No, that's sweet.
Um, I know, it's cute. Um, and I think that they just so from the time I was 5, so let me back up really quickly. My mom's side of the family lives in Michigan, and my mom would send me there for the summer, and I would, like, fiddle around on Apple II computers. That's how old I am. I'm gonna be 40. But,
Oh,
and I was, like, always just doing something, and so I think they all feel like, "Oh, yeah, this makes sense." Did we think it would be sex? Probably not, but, like, this all makes sense, and so they're hyper supportive, and I think they also we don't have to get into it too much, but I think especially in this week, in a really critical week in US policy,
mm,
I think they feel like I'm doing something that matters, so
wow.
that's really exciting.
That's sweet. That's pretty cool. I mean, I haven't really been keeping up, I guess, too much with what you guys are doing as a brand, but are you guys like helping and getting involved in these sorts of social issues? Like, are you taking a stand?
So we support a couple of organizations that are advocates for sex ed in schools. So our foundationally, our take is like everybody deserves access, whether that's information or product. Like our prices are pretty affordable. I will say, like, some prices sometimes seem high, but you're actually getting a lot of product for like the cost. So
Mm-hmm.
um, it's about access. Access comes also in the form of like having design that kind of makes everybody feel comfortable. And we've partnered with organizations that are really out there fighting for reproductive rights, access to education, etc. I think ultimately we just believe that basic sex ed is where this all starts. And if we
Mm-hmm.
could really focus there, decisions would be made in a domino effect around how we should treat our bodies and who we should be telling what to do. So I'll leave it at that, but I
Yeah.
think like we're just really trying to advocate for sex ed.
Wow, that's really powerful actually. I mean, I've been learning a lot about the cons. I don't know if you know Ezra Firestone. He's kind of a big marketer in this side of the on YouTube and whatnot, and he always talks about like helping, serving the world unselfishly and profiting. I really like that concept because it kind of shares that they're not mutually exclusive things. You can do well as a company and also do good for the world. So I think
Yeah.
that's amazing.
I mean, I'm going to say something that's a little off topic, but I was
Go
having this
for it.
conversation with another founder the other day, and hopefully it will, some of your, you know, audience will maybe resonate with this, but like we live in a time when everybody wants to be relevant. And I think the older that I'm getting, the more I'm just realizing like relevancy is fleeting. None of
Mm-hmm.
us, I'm about to hit 40. Like I'm gonna, I'm turning irrelevant, right? But I think the point is that the only the only the only way to have relevancy is to do good, is to affect change, is to be somebody that people care about. And so it doesn't actually matter how much money you have. Like you can be relevant in a small circle, in a big circle, etc. And so I don't aspire to have more than I already have. I aspire to make a difference because that makes me feel like I should get up in the morning.
Yeah.
So it's interesting because people are chasing relevancy right now on TikTok and other ways. And I'm like, girl, that's great. But I hope you have plans to get a real job because
Yeah.
like do something good or at least use the platform to do good because I think ultimately like that's the only way in which you will be remembered. And really you can't take money with you. So you should try to be remembered in a good way.
Wow. Yeah, that's a powerful statement. I think people do forget often that, like, once you pass away, you kind of hit a reset button. Like, you don't really get to take anything with you. So it's important to know, to be aware of what you're doing and like what you're aiming for. That's so true.
Yeah.
Awesome. Well, I have another question that's a little bit random, but I actually polled my audience and asked them, like, hey, what do you guys want me to ask these, founders? Because I know that it's probably not easy to get access to these people, and I really want to learn as much as possible and pass it down. So I want to know, are you guys looking at Amazon at all, or like anything like in terms of outside marketplaces or third party marketplaces, I guess, like Amazon? Is that something you guys are doing?
It's not something on our radar at the moment. And the reason why is like, building a business requires building a consumer business requires capital and product.
Mm-hmm.
And like, you just have to be very thoughtful about the velocity of your product, because you're constantly, if we're talking brass tacks, like we just raised a line of debt so that we could start to like get inventory without having to use our liquidity. And I think that's something that's always top of mind, because even though people will say like, go press the go button, just go to Amazon, like it doesn't work that way. Supply chain is a mess right now, and trying
Yeah.
to keep up with that is a mess. Also, you ultimately want to do it in a way that doesn't dilute the brand and that doesn't turn into a total shit show on
Mm-hmm.
Amazon where you're getting ripped off, etc. So my belief is like, build a really, really good business and have a lot of patience, because you need to do things in the order that will make sure that you don't blow up. Like, I
Yeah.
don't mean good blow up, I mean bad blow up. So Amazon could happen in the future, but at the moment, like we're focused on retailers where our brand visibility is like critically important to the messaging,
Wow.
versus the convenience.
That's
And I
interesting.
will tell you that 98% of our orders go out same day from our warehouse anyway. So like, we're
Right.
trying.
Yeah, you don't really need that Amazon Prime stuff. So that's awesome. And I actually just saw that Shopify acquired Deliver. I don't know if you know about that fulfillment company, but apparently it's like 2 day shipping. It's kind of like Amazon FBA, but now it's going to be integrated into the Shopify ecosystem. So that's going to be really cool.
Amazing. I
Yeah.
mean, I think it's an interesting time, right? Like I order on Amazon too, but when I get like one bottle of vitamins and it's in a giant box, I'm like, if I need to stop, like we need to all chill out and plan our week and like order all at once. So I don't know about this like 24-hour world we're living in, this instant gratification, because
Hmm.
it's pretty wasteful.
Wow, actually that's a really good topic to talk about. So I'm also pretty conscious of what I'm buying and just the things that I'm even like consuming and everything like that. I've never really heard that perspective too much, and I'm sure a lot of my viewers haven't really thought about it too much. But that's a really good point. Like this 24-hour shipping, like as fast as possible, order whatever you want, and not really care about the wastefulness of it is probably gonna end up not in a good way. So, I guess what are some solutions that you can think of like how can we manage this?
I mean, I think like planning. I think one is planning. I think two is like this instant gratification sort of, it comes at a cost for people and the planet. I would say if there's any way that you can, I know this is going to sound so cliche, but like if you can shop locally, like go do that. If you really need that shampoo on Amazon, like fine, but just remember it's probably going to come in a box 8 times its size. Like, could you have just gone to the store? Like, could you have walked there? Whatever. I
Hmm.
think there are just ways to like consider your purchases. Um, and in some strange way, this is why I don't, as much as I don't love the experience, I don't hate on Costco, because I'm like,
Hmm.
well, you get a lot of products and you use the same bottle for a really long time. So I don't know. It's just important to think about. The other thing is it's a dopamine hit. Just like social media, Amazon is a dopamine hit. The instant gratification is a dopamine hit. But when it shows up, like ask yourself, are you still really that excited? Did you need the toothpaste tomorrow? I don't know. I don't know.
No, that's great. Actually, I like the idea of like little things can add up to big things, right? So just take even, I mean, you just mentioning this and us talking about it, I'm sure we'll have some sort of ripple effect out there. So that's why I wanted to talk about it. But yeah,
You
this
have a
is really
larger
interesting.
platform than I do. I'll say, like, our brand matters to people, but I think what you're doing on YouTube, which we haven't even explored YouTube yet, like, that's you have a platform, and I'm glad that you're using it. So,
Wow. Well, thank you. That's really heartwarming. I think you guys should definitely get on YouTube and make some videos. I think that would go a long way. Another thing, I mean, I don't know if this is relevant, and I'm just saying it because it's something I've been thinking about a lot. But I feel like a lot of streamers would really appreciate your brand. I mean, I don't know exactly who your target demographic is, but I feel like that'd be a cool avenue to look
maybe we
forward.
can talk about strategy offline.
That'd be great. Okay. I also found on your website something that I thought was super cool. Maybe you can explain a little bit of what this is about, but it's called Founders Weekend.
Oh, this is funny. So I don't know when I became the big sister of all the founders I know, but that's what happens. And I guess that makes sense. I am a big sister and a big cousin, but
I do get those
I
vibes from you, like a big sister
yeah,
vibe.
yeah. Well, I've been bossy my whole life. So I think I was getting asked a lot about early stage, you know, how did you get funding? Like, because people know that it was really critically just important for me to get funding to get this business off the ground, which means that I hit my head against the wall like for months and months and months and months. And so through that, they're like, hey, can you help me figure out my fundraise? Like, what did you do that didn't work, etc. So I was getting asked so many questions, and I thought, wouldn't it be nice to just get a lot of people in the room together and do it in a way that there's no pretense? It's just like, let's go upstate. Maybe we'll do it somewhere else someday, but go upstate, all sort of talk about things. And so it's essentially like, it's kind of like being in summer camp. Like, we all go to this really big inn and we sit around the fire and we just talk about things and share kind of war stories. And it's
That sounds
really,
fun.
yeah, that's it. That's like all there is to it. And I think people really appreciate the community in that way.
Yeah, I thought that was super cool. And I mean, obviously, your design preferences are showing on this website. Like, it's all so clean and just well branded. It's like, wow.
Thanks.
Yeah, of course. So I'm curious now. You said you're based out of New York. How long have you been living there?
So I moved here in 2016, but I actually went to college here in 2001. So this is
Oh,
my second rodeo.
okay. And do you guys have like an office that you work in, or do you work remotely?
Yeah.
Oh, okay.
I'm
Cool.
in a little phone booth. So yeah, we have an office. We've been in the office basically throughout COVID. We're actually only a 10-person team. So
What?
yeah, we're a 10-person team. There's about 35 people that work on the brand, like with external partners,
Mm-hmm.
but we're a person team. And I don't know, we like coming in. They all went home. They go home at 5 on Friday. So
Yeah. Wow, you stayed late just for this. That's awesome.
no, I have a lot of work to do, and I normally don't stay late, so nobody should feel sorry for me. And yes, my mascara is running, but that's just my fault. It's not because I'm that tired. So it's just, yeah, I mean, we really do like try to have work-life balance here.
That's great. I'm curious, what is your day to day kind of like, what's your morning routine, let's say, or your daily, what does your day usually look like?
It's pretty like 9 to 5. So I wake up really, really early. I wake up without an alarm clock most days, which is usually like 5:36. So
Wow.
yeah, I know. My husband and I will wake up, and then he takes out the dogs. I'll like make breakfast. We get ready, and then we go to work. We work about a mile away from home, so like our lives are pretty chill in that way. And I'm here at 9:30, and then I go home at 6 Monday through Thursday, and then I go home at 5 on Fridays. So it's like a real just
Wow.
9 to 5 job. Um, in the first couple years, it was not like this. Like, Maude was 24 hours a day on the weekends. When I fundraise, it's really bad. It's like I'm working all the time. Um, but now, when we're just moving along, that's my life. And I come in and I wear many, many, many hats, but I'm very much an operator in the business. So
Oh, you are. Okay, so that's interesting. I've been realizing more and more the value of operators, and how I don't know, operating is hard. I think it's probably like the hardest part of running a business, like marketing is like easy compared to, managing logistics and managing, people and just all these different things. What's some advice, I guess, that you can give to founders or people that are just getting started to successfully operate their business?
Be really organized. Like, just we use like a bunch of tools to keep organized. I think it's really building out a process with the future in mind. So like everything we do here is really thinking, could I hand this to somebody that I was training? We do team retreats, and like half the retreat is us cleaning up our files, which sounds funny, but it's like twice a year we go and clean up everything so that we make sure that the next person doesn't come in. Like, we're pretty organized, but still things add up. So be organized, have a business plan, have a good financial partner, like make sure that you just have all of the things ticked. Have a great tax accountant.
That's a good one.
And yeah, and at the same time, you don't have to hire like a million people. You can find fractional people to work with you. So that's why we've kept our team pretty small, is we've been able to work with partners where we don't need a full-time CFO, but I get to work with one a couple times a week. So my advice is just to, slow and steady wins the race, like do it well.
I like that. I really admire how your team is so lean too. I mean, that's kind of my dream, is to continue to build my businesses in a really, with just like a team that feels kind of like a family. I just love that idea. So I think that's super cool.
Well, I think you have to remember, like, venture, which we're venture backed, we're also PE backed, but like venture backed, the idea is you kind of run the business, growth at all costs, et cetera. But we're kind of living in a time this past year, especially, and it's going to get worse and worse for venture, where people need to see profitability. And in order to do that, you have to be lean, and you cannot just spend at all costs. Like, we probably will raise again, and that's because we actually need to, but it's tricky. And in venture, you're kind of taught, like, you're not really taught how to build a real business. You're taught how to build a business that on paper and top line looks interesting, but when you get under the hood, it's not cute. So I think, you've got to learn how to build a real business. So if you have one that's working and it's profitable, you could pay yourself, like, just keep going.
Wow, that's awesome. I'm really curious now. When I talk to people like yourself, I'm always really interested in getting to know their, frame of mind, like their worldviews, and just exploring those things. So I'm really curious, what are some things that you do on your free time when you're not working, like past 6?
So I love living in New York, and I'm very social. So I like go out with friends. I'm always the one trying to look for new places to go. My husband and I are members of many museums. So
Oh,
I collect like old design books. So I go vintage shopping for books at bookstores. I really just like being a part of this city. And then during the warmer months, we bought an old sailboat last summer, and so we go sailing.
wow.
And yeah, which is really relaxing. I'm pretty much a go person, so I can't do that on a boat.
It kind of
So
forces you to relax.
it forces me to relax, and I think it's my way of just turning my brain off, because it definitely is not, it doesn't take a minute at most days. So yeah, and then we have 4 rescue animals. We love pets, and so
What kind
Ian
of
and
animals?
I have 2 old lady Shih Tzus and 2 old lady Persian cats, and
Oh,
they're really
cute.
cute. Yeah, they're really cute. So that's a lot of work. That's my
Yeah.
off hours.
That is a lot of work for animals. Is well, cats are sort of easier. I have a
Yeah.
cat myself. They're a bit nicer, I guess, in that sense. But that's awesome. I would love to have that combination someday as well. It sounds fun.
They're cute. I mean, all in, they're like the size of a one dog, but yeah.
That's funny. Do you know your Myers-Briggs personality test by chance?
Yeah.
Do you
I
mind
don't
sharing?
know. Yeah, I don't know. Here, I'm gonna look this up because I don't actually know. Have you ever heard of 16 personalities? It's
Yeah,
the
that's
same
what I'm
thing.
talking about. Yeah, that's what I'm talking about.
Okay, no. I know that's what you're talking about, but there's actually a site called that.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm the executive. So
Oh,
whatever.
okay.
Yeah, let's look
I
up
think
what it.
that's like INFP or INTP or something like that.
Here, I'll tell you.
I love that
It's
website.
yeah, it's ESTJ.
ESTJ. Oh, wow. That's interesting. I think that's the same. Not that it matters, but it's just interesting. I think like Elon Musk and other like big founders have a similar personality type.
It says me, Sonia Sotomayor, Judge Judy,
Judge Judy.
yeah,
That's awesome.
John D. Rockefeller,
Wow.
and yeah, and Dwight Schrute from The Office.
That's pretty funny. I don't see that one, but hey, Judge Judy is a beast, so that's pretty awesome.
She's a tough cookie. Yeah.
Interesting.
Um, it is. I did want to mention something because I kind of touched on this, but it's something that maybe your readers will look up more. The thing that I'm saying about sort of being patient and just enjoying this is really related to if you've ever read anything about the arrival fallacy. Do you know what I'm talking about?
No, I don't.
So the arrival fallacy is like the belief that if you get somewhere, if you make it, if you make this amount of money, etc., like you'll feel like you've arrived, and it's not true. Like you just will never feel that. Everybody continues to want more and more, and so it's a rare thing to be grateful for what you have and to be patient with yourself through the process. So I that's kind of like what I live by. I really enjoy my life as it is today, and if I died tomorrow, I would be really happy.
That's powerful. That's really powerful. I love that. I actually I mean, I always think about those sorts of things as well, especially like I think as an entrepreneur, maybe it's natural because you're constantly, setting goals and trying to aim higher. But that's such a powerful frame to look at the world as. It's like, be grateful for what you have because no matter what, like there will always be more that you want.
The
So
goalpost keeps moving. It doesn't.
exactly.
Yeah.
Yeah, and it sounds kind of dumb to, once you reach a goal, now you'll enjoy your life. Like that doesn't really make sense.
No, my grandfather worked for Great Lakes Steel in Michigan for 50 years, and he died on the plane of his first vacation in the first month of retirement.
Wow, that's so
Yeah.
sad. That's tragic.
I know, and it's like I just always think about that. And I don't think he would have changed anything knowing that because he just was a hard worker, but I think it's something to consider when you think about the future. Like you're just don't live in the future. Plan for
Yeah.
the future, but don't live in the future.
Yeah, that's fair. Some people do love to work. I mean, and we get to work, which is something to be grateful for as well. But that's interesting. So, did your family? You have Mexican heritage, correct?
Hmm.
Did your family grow up in Mexico? Like, how are you an immigrant, or were your
Oh,
parents
Mexican
immigrants?
family? No. So
Basically.
my mom was born in Detroit,
Okay.
but her parents were born in Mexico, and then my dad's family's been in New Mexico for 17 generations. So before it was even the U.S.
Oh,
So I'm very American on one side,
interesting.
but technically Mexican on both sides.
Do you speak in English with your mom or in Spanish at
I
all?
do, and if anybody's from Michigan, they'll know that you speak in real specific English because it's like the best accent. If I talk to my aunts, it's so funny. But yeah, my Spanish is not great. I didn't grow up speaking Spanish. My mom, when she was mad at me, she spoke to me in Spanish, so I
That's
pretended
funny.
to understand. Yeah. And then Ian, my husband, is half Peruvian, and his Spanish is not great either. So something to, but something to do, something
Yeah,
to
that's
learn.
something to potentially work on. I'm from Chile myself, so I grew up speaking Spanish. That's why I was just curious to know because I only speak with my parents in Spanish. So I was just curious. Duolingo is a great app, and the
I
founder
know.
lives in New York too, I think. I don't
And
know,
I've heard
maybe you know him.
Duolingo. I feel like Duolingo's kind of a ESTJ.
Yeah, 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 definitely. That guy is pretty nuts. I read a little story about him. I think I did a video on it. That's cool. Have you met a lot of? I mean, I'm sure you know a ton of founders by now. Has networking played a big role in the success of your businesses?
That's an interesting question because I think it has, but a lot of it comes down to, yeah, I mean, I think your name is like worth something when people can vouch for you, and you just never know who knows someone else. So like in the process of fundraising, it could be a short conversation and someone gets you to where you need to go. So I think it is really important to network. But networking is interesting because it can often be, and like the point of Founders Weekend was to be the opposite of this, but it can often be very transactional.
Mm-hmm.
And so I found like it's really important to network with reciprocity in mind, like making sure that when you're asking for things, you would be there for that person. So if you're going to network, you just need to be thoughtful, because I think ultimately, like, you don't want to be the person that just tries to get to where you need to go without consideration for others. So I try to network with that in mind. Like, it's not about getting something. It's like just about having the community that if you asked a question, like, they would know.
Yeah, I love that. I think I like that because a lot of people look at networking as like if you don't network, like you're not gonna make it anywhere or something. But I think that's kind of like a cringe sort of outlook on it. But I really like that. So I'm curious now. What are some of the next things that you're working on? Are you just, full focus on growing the business, getting into more, retail locations? What's in it for Maude?
More products, more retail locations, more geographic locations, building the team, dealing with trademarks, dealing with fundraising, dealing with insurance. It's like, it's always
Wow.
something. It's, yeah. And, we're really excited to be launching. We're now shipping to 33 countries, but we're like actually going to be in retail in other countries, which is really cool. Um, I don't know. I'm super excited for this year. There's like a lot happening. So we're just going to keep going. Hopefully I
Yeah,
can hire good people, because it's tough to hire.
definitely. I mean, you guys have a small team and you've been able to accomplish so much. So, I mean, I'm guessing you're pretty good at this by now.
I don't know. I've had some duds. Like, I think hiring is just, I'll say this, and this might resonate too with people watching, but it's like, there's this, I kind of call it like the warm body effect. Like, when you're just starting out, you're like, oh, you're a person, you have a heartbeat. Like, I need your help. And you'll surround yourself with people you kind of like are willing to make work, even if you maybe know that it's not the right fit, whether because you're impatient or because you're scared. Like, there's lots of reasons. So that's been interesting through this process, is like reflecting on why I've made certain hiring decisions, or like, especially when they don't go well. But the pipeline of hires is always hard too. So I don't know.
Yeah, no, that makes sense. I mean, sorry, somebody's like messaging me a lot on Discord. I
I'm
don't know if you
excited.
use Discord at all, but yeah, it's a pretty cool software for
I
community
don't use
building.
this part. I'm too old for this. I don't know.
I mean, you don't. This is kind of cliche, but you don't look your age at all. So I did
Well,
not guess that. That's interesting. But
yeah.
that's a lot of wisdom. So I'm glad that we've gotten to conversate, and even though to you this may be just like some normal stuff. I mean, like you mentioned earlier, it may sound obvious some of these things, but to me, and I'm sure to like a lot of people watching this right now, it's hugely valuable. So, um, you know, you shouldn't take that for granted for sure. Like your word
Thank
is
you.
really powerful.
I appreciate it. I mean, I think, I don't know. I think it's all just, this is going to sound silly, but it's really just, uh, how do I explain this in a way that doesn't sound really,
It's okay to
just,
be silly.
no, I was going to say, like, you have to remember you're just a shepherd of the business. You're not the business. So in
Mm,
doing that, you have to remember, like, if you can take yourself out of the equation, you start to think about these things, and they become more obvious, because you're like, okay, let's pretend this is my friend's business and I'm giving them advice. Like, what kinds of things would I do? And I need to take my own advice when it comes to hiring. But it's like, you kind of step back and you're able to be like, okay, I need to make the best decisions possible for the health of this business. Let me take my ego out of it, because as I just said about the arrival fallacy, and Maude's been featured in a lot of magazines and yada yada, it doesn't change the way you feel about yourself. So take yourself out of it. Try to just run the business in a way that's as smart, as you can possibly make it. And I think that's like your job.
mm-hmm.
If you're looking for other things out of like your business, then you might like want to talk to somebody else.
Yeah.
uh, anyway.
So I'm curious now, do you plan on staying in New York for, uh, a while?
I love New York. I think I'll always have a home in New York. And I see the little old ladies walking by the park and I'm like, I want to be one of those, you know. Um, I really like city life. I like being at the epicenter of culture and I live in Brooklyn, so it's a little quieter than like being in the city, but I love it. And when I think of being elsewhere, I always think that I would have a place here if I could. So,
That would
yeah.
be really cool. Because you've moved around a lot. I mean, you said you went from LA, you didn't want to move to San Francisco, you grew up in Michigan.
Well, Michigan was where my family was, so I just
Oh,
got
okay.
sent. Yeah. But I've grown up the three places I've lived full time are New Mexico, California, and New York. I've never lived in any other states. But I have moved back and forth between those. So yes.
Cool. So my last question, because I think we've gone on for a good amount of time here, and this has been awesome. But I'm curious, like, if you had to give a simple or not simple, whatever you want, piece of advice to somebody who is just starting. A lot of young people are watching my channel, but not just young people, people of all ages. I mean, it doesn't matter what age you are, you can get started with anything at any time. What's some good advice that you can give those people?
It's really one foot in front of the other. Like I say a lot to the team, it's simultaneously fast and slow. Like you'll be in it on the day to day and you're like, oh my gosh, like this is taking forever, or I'm waiting for a product, or I'm trying to build this, app or whatever you're doing. And you'll be like, this feels slow. But then you'll turn around and look at where you came from and how you got here. And you're like, oh, wow, I've done something. So just put one foot in front of the other. Like that's the best advice I can tell you. And in doing that, also make every day like count personally. If eating a cookie before bed is your thing, like do that. If going for a run or hanging out with your friends, like do that, because this is going to take a while and anything that matters does take time. And so that's my best advice, is just like really commit to it. And I get it. You're making $1 million on TikTok. Like, fine, like milk that. But I was here for the early days of Instagram and here we are. Like, it's not
Yeah,
the same thing anymore, right? So just do something that
that's a good
matters.
point. Wow. Well, thanks again for taking the time to do this. I mean, it truly means so much to me. I was really nervous ahead of this, but I mean, this was such a chill conversation. I did tell you, I was like, this usually is a pretty chill conversation. So I don't know why I was nervous. But either way, thank you so much for taking the time. And I just really appreciate it. And I hope the people watching this will appreciate it as well. Where can people find you, I guess, if you want people to find you somewhere? Maybe you don't, I don't know, but where can they find you?
Well, I guess I'm old school on Instagram, which is just my
Cool.
name. My handle is my name. Or you can find getmod.com because we
Sweet.
couldn't just get mod. So
That's a good solution. I like that. Or .co. Do you guys own mod.co?
I feel like we do because we own a lot of crazy URLs. But
That's a
anyway,
good one. All right. Well, thank you. I hope you have a great rest of your weekend. And yeah, we should chat again sometime.
yeah, igualmente. I'll talk to
Igualmente.
you.
Wow, that was great. Talk soon.